Good morning to everyone. My name is Mohan Reddy. I am working in DURGASOFT as a .NET trainer. Today I am going to discuss about introduction to .NET. So you know that .NET is a product of Microsoft, and .NET is announced by Bill Gates in the year of 2000, and the first version of .NET is released in the year of 2002. .NET stands for Network Enabled Technology. .NET stands for Network Enabled Technology. But till now Microsoft has not given any abbreviation for .NET. Any official abbreviation for .NET Microsoft has not given. So .NET stands for Network Enabled Technology, we will say that. Next, what is .NET means? What is .NET? .NET is a framework tool. .NET is a framework tool which supports around 60 plus programming languages. Which supports around 60 plus programming languages. .NET is a framework tool. So here we need to discuss .NET is a framework tool which supports 60 plus programming languages. So in these 60 plus programming languages, 9 programming languages are designed by Microsoft. 9 programming languages are designed by Microsoft, and remaining all designed by non-Microsoft. Remaining programming languages are designed by non-Microsoft. The most 9 important programming languages which is developed by Microsoft are, here I am just listing out that 9 programming languages. First one is C#.NET, VB.NET, C++.NET, J#.NET, F#.NET, JScript.NET, Windows PowerShell, Iron, Ruby, Iron, Python. These are 9 programming languages which are developed by Microsoft. So in these 9 programming languages, most oftenly used programming languages are C#.NET and VB.NET. You know that C#.NET is most powerful programming language. So C#.NET is the most powerful programming language, and VB.NET also can be used in real-time application development, and also these programming languages. And as a programmer, we can use any programming language to develop the application code. So these 9 programming languages are which are developed by Microsoft. And to know that non-Microsoft programming languages which are developed, remaining programming languages, that are, you can visit this site www.netpowered.com. If you go to this site, you will be able to get what are the .NET support programming languages. Okay, right. So what is .NET means? .NET is a framework tool which supports different types of programming languages. Then we need to discuss here .NET framework means what? .NET framework means what? .NET framework is a collection of class libraries. .NET framework is a collection of class libraries. So that means here it is a framework, .NET framework. It is contains some collection of class libraries. Class libraries contain some classes and methods, functions, so and so. All are including in .NET framework. So .NET framework is developed by Microsoft, and .NET framework is a free software. .NET framework is a free software we can download from Microsoft site and install into our machine. So without .NET framework there is no .NET. So without .NET framework there is no .NET. Why? Because with help of .NET framework only we can able to develop an application in .NET. So without .NET framework there is no .NET. So .NET framework is a free software we can download from Microsoft site. So when we install .NET framework into our machine, so there are class libraries gets installed into our machine automatically. So that with the help of that class libraries only, so any programmer can develop the application code and everything. So without .NET framework, no installation possible class libraries, and without class libraries we cannot start the programming part in .NET. So why .NET? The question is here, I am telling here, why .NET? Why .NET? .NET is used to build an application, or .NET is used to develop different types of application. So what type of applications we can develop in .NET? The mainly standalone applications or desktop applications, and distributed applications, and standalone application and desktop application means there are mainly two standalone applications in .NET. One is console application and next one is Windows Forms application. Console application, next one is Windows Forms application. These two applications are standalone or desktop application. So what is the standalone and what is the desktop application, we will be discussing in later sessions. And distributed application means this is web application, that is ASP.NET web application. So not only these standalone and distributed applications, we can able to develop different types of application in .NET, like WCF applications, Windows Communication Foundation, and WPF, Windows Presentation Foundation, and MVC Model View Control, and Ajax applications, and Crystal Report setup and deployment. We can develop different types of application using .NET. So but any type of application if you want to develop in .NET, then compulsory we should use a framework called .NET framework. So without .NET framework there is no .NET. So that's what it is, a heart of .NET. .NET framework is a heart of .NET. Yes. Next I'm going to discuss about what is platform, because if I take anything, so people will ask whether it is platform independent or dependent. If I take Java, means Java is purely platform independent. Same like if .NET is platform independent or dependent, we have to decide. Then before that I am going to talk about what is platform. Platform means what? Platform is a combination of operating system architecture and processor architecture. These two combination we can call it as platform. Platform is a combination of OS architecture and processor architecture. These two combination is called platform. And platform dependent means the programming language code can be able to run only particular operating system, is known as platform dependent. And platform independent means a programming language code is able to run in any operating system, is known as platform independent, we can say. So here the thing is, .NET is platform dependent or independent. .NET is a platform dependent using .NET framework. That means what? When we are using .NET framework, the .NET framework code is able to run only on particular operating system. That means .NET framework code is able to run only Windows based operating system. Windows based operating system. You know that Windows based operating systems are Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows Vista, Windows 8, Windows 10. These all are Windows based operating systems. So that means when we are using .NET framework to develop .NET application, then .NET framework code is able to run only on Windows based operating system, XP 7, Vista 8 or 10. So that means in this case we can say .NET is a platform dependent, because when we use .NET framework, the code cannot be run on other operating systems like Unix, Linux, Solaris, like that. Okay, right. So .NET is platform independent also. Here .NET is both, we can say. .NET is platform independent also. That means how do we make our application into platform independent? Then instead of .NET framework, there is a separate framework called Mono framework. there is a mono framework. So instead of .NET framework, if we use mono framework, then .NET application can be able to run on all operating system, including Windows. So you can see this all operating system, it will be run. So mono framework is what here? Mono framework is a third-party framework which is developed by Novell company. So if you want to make your .NET application as a platform independent, then we should use a framework called mono framework. And if we use .NET framework, then .NET framework code is able to run only window based operating system. That means what here? So when we use .NET framework, .NET is platform dependent. When we use mono framework, .NET is platform independent. .NET framework code is able to run only window based operating system. Mono framework code is able to run in all operating system. Then the thing is, .NET framework is a free software which is developed by Microsoft. So freely it is available. And whereas mono framework is not a free software, it is a licensed software. You should purchase from third-party company, that is Novell. So that's what the most of the people will make their application as platform dependent using .NET framework. So here .NET framework is a product of Microsoft, all window based operating system also product of Microsoft. So .NET is both platform dependent when we are using .NET framework, and .NET is platform independent when we are using mono framework. Only the difference is .NET framework is a free software, and whereas mono framework is not a free software, it is a licensed software. Okay, right. So this is what is .NET and why .NET, and .NET will support how many programming languages this is. Okay, right. So next I am going to discuss .NET program execution process. In .NET, when we write the coding part, that can be execute. How it will be executed and how it will be compiled, how many compilations are there in .NET program execution. Now here I am going to discuss. So whenever we write the code in any programming language of .NET, that code is considered as source code. Here I am going to discuss what? Code execution process in .NET. Code execution process in .NET. Right. For example, if I write the code in C++, C# and J# or F#, any programming language of .NET, that code is called as source code. Source code is compiled by language compiler, because every programming language is having its own language compiler, and after language compiler it generate MSIL code or CIL code, or else IL code we can call it as. MSIL stands for Microsoft Intermediate Language, or CIL stands for Common Intermediate Language. So here up to here first compilation, because in .NET code execution process, code will be compiled twice. In first compilation, what will happen? Source code, that means you may write this code in C#.NET or VB.NET or J# or F#, any programming language of .NET. If you write, that code is called what? Source code. And source code is compiled by language compiler, because every programming language is having its own compiler. And after that compilation successfully done, when compilation successfully done, it generate what code? MSIL code, Microsoft Intermediate Language code or Common Intermediate Language code. It also called as IL code, Intermediate Language code. So this is first compilation. In second compilation, what's happened? You can see this. Here a main component is there, that is CLR. CLR is contained JIT. JIT stands for just-in-time compiler. It is associated with CLR, and then it is generate native code. Native code means here native to the operating system. Then after that, code is going to be executed. Code is executed. Here this is second compilation. Now in first compilation, what will happen? Source code is compiled by language compiler and generate MSIL, Microsoft Intermediate Language Code. In second compilation, this MSIL code is converted into native code using just-in-time compiler. Here just-in-time compiler is taking responsibility to converting that MSIL code into native code, and the code is going to be executed by CLR. CLR stands for Common Language Runtime. So how the Java people will have JVM, Java Virtual Machine, same in .NET, CLR is there, Common Language Runtime. It is provide execution environment to the .NET applications. So here second compilation will be happen, and the code is executed by CLR and generate what type of code? Native code. This native code is nothing but it is a native to the operating system. Which operating system we are going to run, that is native to the operating system. It is mission understandable code or system understandable code or native code, and then code is going to be executed. So here we can say in .NET program execution part, the code is going to be compiled in twice. In first compilation, source code is compiled by language compiler and it generate MSIL. In second compilation, MSIL code is converted into native code and native code is executed by operating system and it will be generated to the code execution. So this is what code execution part in .NET. If you take any programming language, this is only will happen. So there are two compilations will be takes place while program is going to be run and while program is going to be compiled and run, right? So this is the code execution process in .NET. Here SC means source code, SC means source code, LC means language compiler, MSIL means Microsoft Intermediate Language, and CIL means Common Intermediate Language, and CLR stands for Common Language Runtime, and JIT stands for just-in-time compiler, and this is the abbreviations of all those things: source code, language compiler, Microsoft Intermediate Language. It also called as CIL, Common Intermediate Language, and it also called as IL code, we can say Intermediate Language Code. And CLR is a main component in .NET Common Language Runtime, and just-in-time compiler is a second compilation which is responsible to convert that MSIL code into native code. So this is the code execution process in .NET, right? Next I am going to talk about here Visual Studio. So why Visual Studio? So I told that without .NET framework there is no .NET. Without .NET framework there is no .NET. We have to use .NET framework to develop any application in .NET. Okay. So even though we have .NET framework, then when we are going to write the code, then we should use an editor tool called Visual Studio in .NET. Okay. The editor tool is nothing but Visual Studio. So Visual Studio, it is just an editor tool. It is also called as Integrated Development Environment, IDE. Visual Studio is just an editor tool. It is also called as Integrated Development Environment, IDE. Then Visual Studio is used to edit the .NET code, and using Visual Studio we can able to develop different types of applications like console applications, Windows Forms application, web application, WCF application, WPF applications, and MVC and Ajax, and every different types of application is possible with Visual Studio. And Visual Studio will provide very good designing and coding facilities to the programmer, and it is also called as Integrated Development Environment. And Visual Studio is not a free software, it is a licensed software you should purchase from Microsoft. So whereas .NET Framework is a free software, but with .NET Framework, with Visual Studio, then we can able to develop the application. Using .NET framework we can write our code, but where we should write our code? Then in Visual Studio. It is just an editor tool which is used to edit .NET code, or which is used to write .NET programming part and everything here. Okay, right. So Microsoft, the first version of .NET is released in the year of 2002. Then from that first version onwards till today, so many versions have been released by Microsoft. That versions are .NET Framework, first version is 1.0, then .NET Framework 1.0, and at the time Microsoft has released Visual Studio environment for editing the code and writing the code. And later Microsoft .NET Framework 1.1 and Visual Studio 2003, then 2.0 Visual Studio 2005, 3.0 it is not applicable, 2005 only, then 3.5 Visual Studio 2008 and 4.0 Visual Studio 2010, 4.5 Visual Studio 2012, and latest version is 4.6 Visual Studio 2015. Okay, so these are the versions of .NET Framework and Visual Studio. So version wise some features will be added by Microsoft. Then latest version of .NET Framework is 4.6 and Visual Studio version is Visual Studio 2015. Okay, right. So when we wanted to develop any application in .NET, then to use some other programming language, then compulsory we should use a framework version, and according to that framework version we should install that Visual Studio version also. Framework means which is help to write the code in .NET programming, and Visual Studio is used to support to write the code in their editor tool. So these all editor applications, Visual Studio 2015 4.6, this is the latest version, right? So we should develop any if you want to develop any application, we should use this framework, and also along with this we should use that Visual Studio environment. Okay, right. So these are the versions of .NET Framework. Next I am going to discuss about .NET Framework components. So what are the .NET Framework components? Then what is the use of that .NET Framework components I am going to discuss here. .NET Framework components. .NET Framework components. Here .NET Framework is mainly two components. One is CLR. It stands for Common Language Runtime, and next one is BCL. It stands for Base Class Library. Base Class Library. It also called as FCL, Framework Class Library. Framework Class Library we can say. Okay, so these are the two components, main important components in .NET Framework, that is CLR and Base Class Library. CLR stands for Common Language Runtime, Base Class Library BCL, or it also called as FCL, Framework Class Library. So first I will talk about CLR. Okay, so CLR is a main component which is used to provide runtime environment to .NET applications. When we write the programming part into .NET, then when we want to run the application, that runtime environment who will provide means Common Language Runtime will provide. So why the name is Common Language Runtime? Because I told that .NET is support multiple programming languages. Programmers can choose different programming languages to develop their applications. Then it will support all programming languages runtime environment, CLR. So that's what it is called, Common Language Runtime. It will support runtime environment to common programming languages which are supported to .NET only. Then CLR is again categorized into four subcomponents. One is CLS. It stands for Common Language Specification. It stands for Common Language Specification. Next one is CTS. It stands for Common Type System. Next one is GC. This is Garbage Collector. Next one is JIT. It's Just in Time. It is a compiler. So these are the 4 subcomponents are available in CLR. CLR is again categorized into 4 subcomponents. One is CLS, Common Language Specification, CTS, Common Type System, GC, Garbage Collector, and JIT, Just in Time Compiler. Okay. So with the help of these 4 subcomponents, Common Language Runtime is provide runtime environment to all .NET programming languages. Okay, we will talk about CLS now. So Common Language Specification, right? So mainly the purpose of Common Language Specification is used to provide language interoperability. Using CLS, we can achieve language interoperability. Language interoperability, LI, language interoperability means providing code execution support in .NET to other programming languages. This is known as language interoperability, we can say. We are providing code execution support in .NET to other programming languages. That concept is known as language interoperability. Then that can be achieved using what? CLS, Common Language Specification. So here, language interoperability can be achieved in 2 different scenarios. Language interoperability can be achieved in 2 different scenarios. One is managed code, next one is unmanaged code. One is managed code, next one is unmanaged code. In these 2 ways we can achieve language interoperability using Common Language Specification. Simple. Managed code means what? Just now we have seen the code execution support in .NET. Source code is compiled by language compiler and it generates what code? MSIL code. And managed code means the code which is generate MSIL after compilation. Managed code means what? The code which is generate MSIL after compilation, that code is known as managed code, because this MSIL is going to be managed by CLR. This MSIL code is going to be managed by CLR. This code is known as managed code. Here, managed code purpose, Common Language Runtime will provide. So Common Language Specification is used to achieve language interoperability. Language interoperability can be achieved in 2 different ways. One is managed code and unmanaged code. Managed code means the code which is generate MSIL after compilation, and that code is going to be managed by CLR. This code is known as managed code. For managed code, CLR is provide .NET facilities. For managed code, CLR is provide .NET facilities, that is code access security, and exception handling and automatic memory management. Then unmanaged code means before development of .NET, the programming languages were there. That programming languages also .NET will support program execution support. So that programming languages are before development of .NET, that is COM components and Win32 API. So these programming languages will not generate MSIL, and these programming languages will not managed by Common Language Runtime. Rather, these will be transferred to operating system which will be managed. So this type of code we can call it as unmanaged code. So unmanaged code means the code which is not generate MSIL and that is not managed by CLR, which is managed by operating system, is known as unmanaged code. So managed code, unmanaged code, in these 2 ways we can achieve language interoperability. So we discussed already, language interoperability means providing code execution support in .NET to other programming languages. That concept is known as language interoperability. That can be achieved with the help of CLS. See, we know that every programming language is having its own syntactical rules and regulations. and one programming language cannot understand other programming language syntactical rules and regulations. So here .NET common language runtime is responsibility to provide or to understand all other programming languages syntactical rules and regulations, because we told that .NET will support multiple programming languages. So programmer choose any programming language to write the programming part, then CLR is responsibility to support environment, that is runtime environment. So CLS is able to convert that all programming languages syntactical rules and regulations into CLR understandable format. So the CLS is responsible to convert all other programming languages syntactical rules and regulations into CLR understandable format. So in this way it will provide runtime environment. Then next subcomponent of CLR is, that is CTS, common type system. So you know that every programming language is having its own data type system, and one programming language cannot understand other programming language data type system. So here CTS is responsible to understand all other programming language data type system, and it will be converted into CLR understandable format, that is common understandable format, and it will provide to CLR. So the CTS can be of two types here. Common type system can be of two types. One is value types and next one is reference types. One is value types and next one is reference type. So value type and reference type under comes into CTS. Common type system can be of two types. What is value type? Value type means the value which is stored directly into their memory location, that is called value type. So value type is going to work with stack mechanism, and for value type common language runtime is allot memory at compilation time. And whereas reference type means, so the value which is not going to store directly into their memory location, rather the value will be stored into other memory location. This is known as reference type, we can say. Then reference type is going to work with the heap mechanism, and for reference type CLR is provide memory at running time. So value type, for value type CLR is provide memory at compile time. For reference type CLR is provide memory at running time. So these two under comes into common type system. Okay, right. CLS is a responsibility to understand all other programming language syntactical rules and regulations, and CTS is responsibility to understand all other programming languages data type system. Okay, so this is CLS and CTS. Now we will be talk about garbage collector. It is a important garbage collector. So garbage collector is used to provide automatic memory management. Garbage collector is used to provide automatic memory management. So garbage collector, if there is no garbage collector, then as a programmer we need to write memory management task code also. So this may increase burden onto the programmer. So there is a garbage collector which is used to provide automatic memory management to our programs and objects and all. Okay, right. So here I am discuss what is automatic memory management. We told that garbage collector is provide automatic memory management. Then we will talk about what is automatic memory management. Right. So garbage collector is having internally its own engine known as optimization engine. Garbage collector is having its own engine known as optimization engine. This optimization engine will work when the objects are divided into two categories. One is objects in use and next one is idled objects. Okay, objects in use and idled objects. Objects in use means the application still that objects are using. Idled objects means the applications are not using that objects have been created for a long time. So these idled objects also called as garbage. Garbage means unwanted thing, unwanted memory. So these objects in use and idled objects can be divided into two categories by what? Optimization engine. Garbage collector is having a separate engine known as optimization engine, it can be work when that divide the objects into two categories, objects in use and idled objects. So simply the optimization engine will destroy these idled objects and garbage thing and objects in use kept in memory. This concept or this process is known as automatic memory management. Okay, automatic memory management. So here I am going to explain what is the working nature of garbage collector, then how it will be provide memory to objects or memory to application objects. Now we will be discussed now, right? So garbage collector is completely work with managed heap. Garbage collector is completely work with managed heap. So this is managed heap. Garbage collector is completely work with managed heap, and this garbage collector is divided into three generations. Garbage collector is divided into three generations, that is generation 0 and generation 1 and generation 2. These are the three generations are there in garbage collector. So always garbage collector generations like generation 0 is less than generation 1 is less than generation 2, or in garbage collector generation 2 is greater than generation 1 is greater than generation 0. So this is what? So that means, for example, you can see this generation 0 is 128 kilobytes and generation 1 is 2 megabytes and 10 megabytes, for example. So this is memory for generations here. So garbage collector internally is divided into three generations, 0, 1, 2, and it will be completely work with managed heap mechanism, and always in garbage collector generation 0 is less than generation 1 is less than generation 2, or generation 2 is greater than generation 1 is greater than generation 0. Okay, right. So CLR is allot memory to its generations, garbage collector generations, because according to application size or according to project size only, common language runtime is allot memory to garbage collector generations. So that's what it is, not a fixed size, just I am taking according to our view. Okay, so generation 0 is small portion and generation 1 is somewhat big and generation 2 is too big. There are three generations only, right? So one more important thing here in garbage collector, there is a thumb rule or constant rule. So garbage collector compulsory should accept newly created object into generation 0 only. That means, so all whatever we create or programmer or application is trying to create an objects, that all newly created objects compulsory should be stored in generation 0 only. That means garbage collector don't have any right to place the newly created objects either in generation 1 or in generation 2. It must and should be placed in generation 0 only. So for example, an application is trying to create objects like this obj1 and obj2, obj3, obj4, obj5. These are the 5 objects which are created by application. Then application is trying to create objects. These all objects are created and newly created object, it will be placed in generation 0, right? Whenever application is trying to create more objects, then that objects will be stored in generation 0. For example, here generation 0 is going to be filled with all objects, there is no memory. So that's what I am going to do here. So what garbage collector will do internally, if generation 0 is become full of objects, in this situation optimization engine will come into the picture. So optimization engine, this optimization engine will come and it will perform internally a method, a special method called collection means method. Using this method, optimization engine will examine this generation 0 with all objects. In these objects, whatever the idled objects are there and what objects are used are there, then it can be find. After that, in this generation 0, idled objects are going to be destroyed from the memory and objects in use are kept in memory. So idled objects, for example, you can see this object 3 and object 4 and object 5 are idled objects. That means that is unwanted objects or garbage objects. Then that can be destroyed from this generation 0, or it will be moved into finalization queue. So whenever the object 1, object 2 is are useful objects, still that application is using these objects are immediately flushed down into generation 1. So object 1 and object 2 will come and stored into generation 1, and this entire the portion generation 0 will become empty. The newly created object will be stored in generation 0. For example, after so many collection means method like this here, 6, 7, object 8, object 9, so many objects are there, and here also so many objects are there after collection of after finding so many collection means method. Okay, then if in case generation 0 and generation 1 is going to become full of objects, in that case optimization engine will perform a collection means method in generation 0 and generation 1. In both generations, whatever the idled objects are there, that can be destroyed from the generations or memory, and or it is moved into finalization queue, and generation 1 objects in use are flushed down into generation 2, and generation 0 objects in use are flushed down into generation 1, and generation 0 will become empty. Then newly created object will be stored in generation 0. So this is the way to provide automatic memory management to its object using garbage collector. So garbage collector is used to provide automatic memory management. Automatic memory management means then garbage collector is having some two kind of objects, idled objects and objects in use. Objects in use kept in same memory, idled objects are destroyed from the memory. This concept is known as automatic memory management. That can be provided by garbage collector here. Okay, right. So this entire the garbage collector mechanism is programmable, we can say. That means Microsoft people have written the programming part for doing these kind of things, garbage collector working nature and everything. So without garbage collector we cannot provide memory management. We can provide, but we need to write some sort of code here. Okay, right. So if you write a sort of code to provide automatic memory management, then it may increase burden onto the programmer. So if garbage collector is there, then it will taking care of automatically memory management kind of things, how to manage the objects and how to store in generation 0, 1, 2, 3 like that, it will be there. Okay, right. So this is the working nature of garbage collector. So next last component which is associated with CLR, that is called JIT, just in time compiler. This is a compiler which is used in second compilation of .NET program execution, and just-in-time compiler is taking responsibility to convert that MSIL code into system understandable code, that is called native code or mission code, we can say, right? So using these all 4 subcomponents, CLS, CTS, garbage collector and just-in-time compiler, then CLR is provide runtime environment to .NET programming languages which are support. So without CLR we cannot provide execution environment or runtime environment to .NET support programming languages. Okay, right. So next, this is the first component, it is the most important component, and base class library, it is a second important component of .NET framework. So base class library means it is a collection of class libraries. Framework class library also we can call it as, or else it is called as assemblies also we can call it as. Base class libraries or framework class libraries or assemblies we can call it as, right? Right. So base class libraries are just building blocks of .NET framework. Without base class libraries we cannot write .NET programming part. So without CLR we cannot execute, but without base class libraries we cannot write the programming part, because so all .NET related collection of classes and objects and methods and everything will become in the form of libraries when we install .NET framework. So when we install .NET framework, I told that internally CLR and base class libraries automatically gets installed. So with the help of these framework components only we can able to write the program, and we can able to execute that application and everything. So base class libraries are building blocks of .NET framework. Without base class libraries we cannot write any programming part in .NET. When we install .NET framework, automatically base class libraries will install and it will be present in our system or mission. Okay, right. So base class libraries are just like in .NET, base class libraries are just like C, C++, header, or else packages in Java. So in base class libraries in .NET is same like that. So header files in C++ or packages in Java, that also same in .NET base class libraries. So when we install base class libraries, that will be installed into our system automatically. The physical location of base class library is then root to drive, and after that OS folder, there you will be able to see that assembly folder. So root to drive means when we install .NET framework, it will be located into C drive, and OS folder you will be get that is Windows folder, and after that you can open assembly folder. There the base class library, there are thousands of base class libraries will be there in .NET. Okay, so with the help of that assemblies or base class libraries, we can able to write .NET programming code. Otherwise we cannot able to write that code. Okay, right. So that base class libraries are in the form of two ways. One is .exe and next one is DLL. DLL stands for Dynamic Link Library. DLL stands for Dynamic Link Library. .exe is an executable file. .exe is an executable file. So itself it will run individually because .exe is having an entry point. Entry point means that program executions will be starts from there onwards. That is called entry point. That entry point in .NET or any programming, that is called static void main. Main method is an entry point of the program execution. Then .exe is an executable file. Itself it will run individually because it is having an entry point. So it is having an entry point. That's what when we run that .exe directly it will be run. Okay, then for .exe operating system will create separate process. In that process only .exe will be going to run. And whereas DLL, Dynamic Link Library, Dynamic Link Library means here it is an supportive file. Itself it will not run individually because DLL do not contain any entry point, that is static void main. It is just an supportive file. Okay, so dynamically we are adding link to in the form of library, that is called in the name itself Dynamic Link Library we can call it as. So .exe and DLL are in the form of, that is base class library, it's a part. So base class libraries will be in the form of two ways, .exe and DLL, and using DLL we can achieve reusability also. That means reusability means once if we write the code using .NET component with class library template, that will be create internally DLL. Once that DLL can be added to reference to any application, that can be reused is possible. So with the DLL is possible. Okay, so these are the .NET framework components, that is CLR and base class libraries. These two automatically gets installed when we install .NET framework. As I told, there is no .NET without .NET framework. So there is no .NET without .NET framework. So when we install .NET framework, these two will be installed. With the help of base class libraries, we can able to write a programming part, or we can able to write an application development part. It's possible. After developing an application, if you want to run your programs and code and everything, then compulsory CLR is required. CLR is providing runtime environment to all .NET programming languages. Base class libraries are used to provide coding facilities to the programmer, which will be write with the help of so many class libraries. Okay, so that's all about base class libraries and framework class libraries. These are .NET framework components.